Welcome, Jet fans. Week one of the NFL preseason is behind us. The Jets wrap up the first week of the preseason with a 20-17 win over the Commanders. Um, first things first, this is a kind of game that, obviously all the starters did not play. So you're getting a first glimpse of like that second tier, the depth of this roster. And by all accounts, if you came out of this game not being completely thrilled with the potential depth we have, knowing the amount of injuries we faced over the last couple of years, um, nothing short of just a great a great sight to see that these players actually have the ability to play some football. And I'm going to highlight some of these good players that we had, some of these young guys that came out looking very sharp. Starting with the running game, I'm going to go with Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis. Um, these two running backs came into this game really packed a punch. Braylon Allen averaged 9 yards a carry, but most of it came on one large run where he just kind of showed his power, showed his strength. Coming out of Wisconsin, this was definitely a trait we all understood. When you go from college to the NFL, obviously there's that transition period, and it's very positive to see that he is able to translate that to the NFL. Obviously, it's the first week of the preseason, not kind of putting him in Canton by any means, but you know, knowing where we are as Jet fans, like I seeing what Isaiah Davis and Braylon Allen were able to do in this first preseason game. In the years past, this would have been a situation where we felt like this could be our one-two punch for the next however many years. And the fact that you're layering these two players um, with Brees Hall as being obviously our primary running back, it really just kind of makes this offense so much more difficult to handle. We saw Isaiah Davis being able to catch the ball out of the backfield, even Braylon Allen on a little scramble type of drill with him and Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod got out of the pocket, saw Braylon Allen, kind of flipped it to him for a first down. It got called back because of a penalty. I believe it was ineligible receiver downfield, whatever it was. But you know, we're not really worried about the results. We want to see like what happens when things go off schedule because obviously with Aaron Rodgers as quarterback, that's going to happen pretty frequently. It's all about that second play, um, how we handle when things break down. And Brown Allen found a little pocket on the sideline, stuck there, caught the ball, and in an ideal world that holds for a first down and things move on. But seriously, like this is something that really like is very positive to see. I was a little concerned with the Jets running back depth. Obviously, the Jets understood that too, getting two running backs in the middle rounds of the draft. But it seemed like the Jets found two potential steals in the middle rounds of this draft. Um, going into the season with Izzy as our second running back was going to be a little bit risky, knowing that he didn't kind of produce enough in his rookie season. How's that going to go into the second year? And at this point, really, I mean, you got to kind of look at Izzy, and I think he still has a potential roster spot, but it's going to be up to him these next few weeks to kind of solidify his spot on this roster because I mean, right now you have three running backs I think that are penciled in as primary players in Allen, Davis, and Brees Hall. Obviously, do the Jets fit a fourth running back? They have a lot of areas where they want to keep potential players. Defensive line, they usually keep 9 or 10 players. Offensive line around the same. They have a lot of wide receiver depth. Obviously, in order to make this roster, you're gonna have to show that you can do more than one thing. And can Abanikanda prove that? Obviously, we'll find out over the next few weeks. But as of right now, if you told me that the three starting running backs for this roster were Paul, Allen, and Davis, I think I would love to see that. And really, it's just a check mark in my eyes what I saw from these two players in their first action in the preseason. And I gotta be honest with you, I mean, I understand who Braylon Allen was. I had not realized how big this guy was. I mean, I knew watching him, but he's kind of a weird like when you watch him in interviews, he looks like he's a small guy. When you actually see him on the field, the guy is huge. I noticed he was like 245 pounds, which is right around the size of Derrick Henry, which was kind of shocking to me just by seeing it. But obviously, it's one of those players that on the football field a lot bigger than he is off. So again, just happy with what I saw out of him. He looks like a bruiser. and I'm all here for it. The Jets need a running back like that. That was definitely a need going into this offseason. I know Brees Hall has that ability, but ideally you have Brees Hall, catching the ball, getting the ball in space, and Braylon Allen comes in as being that potential bruiser who can get chunk plays at a time. And even his speed is pretty apparent as well. I think he ran a 4.4 at the combine. So a lot to be positive about with this running game, highlighted by Braylon Allen in this last preseason game. Other players of note, obviously sticking with the offense for now. Olu Fashanu just looks like he's a beast in pass protection. I don't think he got beat one time in this game. Um, he did have a false start early in the game. I think on the first drive or maybe it was the second drive, one or the other. Um, First game jitters, I'm gonna point at that, potentially being the issue there, but obviously, just seeing how he holds himself up in pass protection, it looks like the Jets may have gotten a really good player here in the first round. And obviously, we understand the situation with Olu. He's not gonna be asked to start in his rookie year. He's gonna have the ability to learn behind 2 quality offensive tackles in Smith and Moses. And obviously, a lot of those traits have been kind of, already you're already seeing some of those traits. I think Michael Nania of Jets Factor, was able to kind of show kind of a side by side comparison of Tyron Smith kind of showing his like little fake pension and kind of resetting himself. And then right next to that was Old Fashioned who used that same technique in his first preseason game. So obviously he's taken he's taken on his tutelage from 2 longtime NFL vets and applying them to his game. Definitely a very positive sight to see. Um, he didn't play too much. I think he went through first quarter and a half, maybe a little less than that, but all positive signs that we were able to see out of Fashanu in his opening start. Continuing down the line here, sticking with offense, obviously in this first section here, Titman seems to have control of his snapping issues. Obviously, we all remember a week and a half ago, 2 weeks, it was being highly spoken about that he's having issues with snaps, sailing high. There's been plenty of videos out there. If you're on X or whatever, um, he was having issues. There was apparent issues. They were really kind of trailing on multiple days at a time. Looked like a case of the yips potentially, but in his first preseason game, you saw that he was able to keep that snap down. I think there was a couple of snaps where I saw Tyra Taylor had to like kind of like grab it from the side a little bit. Um, you know, Tyra would make it look no issue there, but that would probably be my only issue. Sorry, my only issue there if I did have any. Um, that's just me nitpicking. Obviously, my eyes were on, how is he going to snap? How's he going to do here? But I think by all accounts, it was a pretty positive performance from him in the opening quarter, opening quarter and a half. um, as we proceed, I'm going to go over to the defensive side of the ball, and right now I'm just kind of keeping it to, you know, players that I think we will likely see during the season, to some extent. And the next one is Bernard Converse. You know, this was a situation where you saw him get tested pretty frequently, including on the opening drive by the Commanders. Then he got hit for a huge gain by the receiver, and even on that play, I feel like his positioning, he was in the right spot. It was just an ideal, perfect landing spot, perfect catch. Everything around it was perfect, including the coverage on the defense. So can't really fault him too much for that. And as Salah mentioned in his press conference, you know, you can see players kind of like bury themselves, kind of you know, dwell on that first play, whatever. He was able to kind of show that quick reaction, like, okay, that was one big play. Let's see how we move forward. And for the rest of the game, I felt like he really handled himself well in coverage. There was a play where it was like a corner route. He kind of grabbed on the jersey a little bit. Maybe could have been called for a holding. So maybe you can kind of throw a little red flag at that one too, as a potential issue. But call didn't get made. That's the NFL. Calls get made. They don't get made. It is what it is. Overall, strong performance. Um, we're in a world here right now where we have our top three cornerbacks already listed. On the outside, it's going to be DJ Reed. It's going to be obviously Sauce Gardner, Carter in the middle, and it's really just a battle for that those outside corner spots behind Reed and Sauce. You got Eccles, you got Bernard Converse, obviously Stiggers, who the Jets just drafted back in April. So a number of bodies here that the Jets can kind of work with, and you know. I don't know. I don't know what the numbers say here because you have potentially six corners that the Jets could potentially keep on the outside of that on the outside that is um, Michael Carter on the inside being that sixth guy, and then obviously you need a backup nickel or a backup you know middle corner kind of guy. And do the Jets go with just a lot of players on the outside and that's not really the best for roster development and roster construction. So it's interesting to see how many corners the Jets do end up keeping. Um, but it's truly is just kind of a good sight to see that again going from a season before where we had a lot of injuries, none to the secondary. Fortunate for us, at least at the corner spot. But to see that your second tier players are showing that they can play in this league, whether it be against backups or starters, they're holding their own in some degree. Next, I'm going to go with a player that I feel like has been getting a lot of praise, based on his performances in training camp. But seeing those performances translate to an actual game in the preseason was pretty enlightening. Leonard Taylor III was a player that I really liked coming out of Miami. Um, Happy the Jets were able to get him as an undrafted pick. Was a little bit of a shock to me. I thought he'd go well, somewhere in the draft at least. But nonetheless, he's on the Jets, and in his first preseason game, he really just kind of shows that he can be like, you know, a guy next somewhere in this defensive line rotation, the interior defensive line. Showed ability to get upfield in pass rush situations, as a run stopper. Just overall, just looks like the kind of frame, body, and type of player that you really want on a team that's expected to go far. Um, you know, the good thing about defensive linemen is you see him on the splash plays, you don't hear him on the big plays, and there weren't that many on his defensive line, especially when he was out there. So a player that I can really kind of look at as saying, okay, you obviously have Quinnen, you obviously have Solomon Thomas, Javon Kinlaw, and obviously just made a couple other moves in the offseason, Fatu. Does he fit in as someone that makes this 53-man roster? I think it's definitely a possibility. Can he contribute on special teams? Is probably going to be the big thing for him. If he can contribute on special teams, that'll give him a roster spot, and eventually, with continued development, I think he'll find a spot on this roster at some point in time. So overall, just really happy with what we saw out of these young players. And last player I'm going to really touch on got a lot of grief through social media, through different means. Will McDonald, did he get a sack in his first preseason game? No. Did he, make an impact in the run game? No. Played a limited game. I think he only played a handful of pass rush snaps. And on the one pass rush snap, he had a spin move, you know, that eventually got called for roughing the passer. Was a soft call potentially, but I've seen a lot softer calls in the NFL, so I'm not really kind of going with the fact that it was a soft call. At the end of the day, if you're a defensive lineman and you're going at the quarterback, he throws the ball and you land on him and don't show any sort of, you know, care in kind of avoiding the landing on him, it's gonna get called. I mean, it's just the way it is. It's gonna get called every single time. And in this case, it did indeed get called. I'm not really kind of overly concerned about that. I'm watching his technique. I'm watching his ability to get around these offensive tackles, offensive linemen, and he showed that ability on that play. And there was another play too where he kind of took a quick jab inside. Again, these plays that you're seeing from him, it looks like he's a player that can make plays. Complain about the draft position all you want. Obviously, Jets probably shouldn't have picked, you know, a rotational pass rusher type of player in the first round of a draft where all the chips were supposed to be in. It is what it is. But at this point in time, he's a player on this team. We got to support him. And Obviously, if he's performing poorly, we're going to call him out for it. Is weight going to be an issue? Yeah, it's going to be an issue in the run game. But at the end of the day, I don't really see that he's going to be asked to contribute in the run game unless obviously injuries happen in front of him. But you have Michael Clemens on the outside. You have Jermaine Johnson. Plenty of bodies that can play the run. Hassan Reddick, when he eventually comes back, is known to be a three three down um, three down edge. So all these factors kind of play into that. He's going to be asked to do exactly what Bryce Huff was asked to do in the beginning of last season before the Jets realized, he can play a little bit more than just situational pass rushing. He's going to be on the Bryce Huff, developmental train. It's going to be, you know, can you contribute as a pass rusher? Fine. If you can do it, put you in more pass rush situations. And if you exceed in that, then eventually, maybe we'll put you in pass rush, running, typical running situations, and then just develop them at that point. You know, Asking for a player that was just asked to be a situational pass rusher to all of a sudden be a three down player and contribute at a high level on a team that's known for rotating their defensive linemen, it's just it doesn't make the most sense. When you draft a player in the first round, yeah, you would hope that that player would contribute in all facets of the game. You don't want someone that's going to contribute in a minimal time. But if he goes on Bryce Huff's path and eventually turns into a guy that can get double digit sacks like Bryce Huff was able to do, you know, I would call this a hit in the draft. It's not a home run. It's not Sauce Gardner. It's not Garrett Wilson. But it's still a hit. There's a lot worse players get picked in the first round, and let's just hope he doesn't trend in that direction, and let's hope that his pass rush skills can eventually lead to moments in games like we've saw with Bryce Huff so many times during his career with the Jets. That's what we're asking for. We're asking for Will McDonald to replace Bryce Huff's abilities on the field and then develop further if you can. And if you can't, it is what it is. Um, but I believe in this coaching staff, especially when it comes to defensive players, to mold and develop and put them in a position that they're going to succeed. Nothing has led me to believe otherwise in their first few years, coaching this team. It's they draft defensive players, they develop them, and they become better. It's just the way it is. So that's kind of where I'm at with Will McDonald. Um, I have a lot of hope in what he can become. I also just have um, my standards set a little low on what I think the rest of us believe he should or shouldn't be, and that's just me. Just gonna finish it off here with just the play of these, you know, last tier players, like these, fringe roster type of players. Especially Adrian Martinez, and even Peasley was showed positive too. But Martinez was able to kind of show something that you know I'm obviously not going to go too much into it, but he showed some abilities that we saw just Zach Wilson at his potential best. I mean, that's not saying a lot. Obviously, we all understand Zach Wilson's long gone and shouldn't draw comparisons to you know a player that was a complete failure for this team. But some of those plays he was making, albeit it was against players that are most likely not going to be on NFL rosters down the road. But at the end of the day, it was something we got to see. Is him making plays that we thought we were going to see out of Zach Wilson. And, him coming out of college, these were the type of plays that we were hoping to eventually see at some point in time. Never got to that point. Um, but Adrian Martinez coming over from the UFL, showed something. Showed some little promise. Is he a future quarterback? I know a lot of people want to talk about that already. It's one preseason game. It's against a bunch of numerous amounts of backups. Some players aren't going to make the team, obviously, but it was just a little bit of a bright sight to see that there is somebody, kind of down there that we can work on, mold, develop. Does he turn something special? You know, the numbers say probably not. It's probably just a flash in the pan in a late preseason game. Um, but at the end of the day, you know, the Jets have had obvious issues with quarterbacks for so long, and to see players kind of showing some signs of something here late in games, it's definitely a sight for us to be thrilled about. And for a team that's really had, shitty quarterback luck over the past however long it's been. I mean, I don't know how long you want to go back. You want to go back to, you know, as far back as Joe Namath. That's up to you. Obviously, had a few good quarterbacks in the middle, just none, obviously, you know, to consider franchise quarterbacks. But I would say, you know, don't kind of shy your eye away from it. It's obviously something there. To be able to perform in those instances, with the team down, eventually get a tying touchdown, eventually lead to a tying game-winning field goal. These are the kind of things you want to see out of a player, especially an undrafted player. Just kind of seeing them build on whatever skills they had that made them successful to this point, and kind of turn into more. Like I said, numbers say it's probably not, but at the end of the day, um, it's still pretty awesome to see that we have some developmental prospects sitting behind the wings. That's pretty much all I got here. Overall, a good week with the Commanders. A lot of reports. The practices were pretty much one-sided for the most part. Got to the game. Obviously, we didn't see much of Daniels' one scoring drive, and you know, because the Jets have handled that situation better with starters. Obviously, that's kind of something to consider there as well. So you can't really judge too much on that. Um, the drop off from C.J. Mosley and Quincy Williams down to Zaire Barnes and Surratt. Obviously, a little bit of a drop off. You would expect that. Um, that leadership on the field is really second to none, almost in my opinion, for what those guys are able to do at the linebacker spot. So you would expect there to be a little tail off. Hopefully, in this next game against the Panthers, we'll get to see some semblance of what the defense might look like. Obviously, they're not going to come out there with scheme; it's going to be mostly vanilla. But you would like to see, at least get an eyeball on, what this defense is going to look like. It's been a while since we've seen it. We know what to expect, but obviously, new players on the team like to see how all those players are scheduled or expected to contribute here in the 2024 season. And the most important part of all, we left this game and mostly in health. You know, wins are what they are in the preseason. We did get the victory, but the biggest victory of all is leaving this game without much on the injury front, and that's really what we're hoping for over the next couple weeks as well, as we get closer and closer to the opening week of the season against the 49ers. That's about it. If you haven't already, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. It's how I grow. It helps my channel. And most importantly, let's go Jets.